Hey everyone, Justin Patton here, executive coach, leadership presence expert. Listen, it has been a while since I've joined you all. So I just want to say happy Friday. It's good to connect with you again. I needed some time to step away. I don't know if you know, but I've actually been digging into research on trust and gentleness and interviewing executives, doing national studies. And so I just needed some time to step away and do some work. So today I wanted to get together and talk with you about trust, what I've learned, answer some of your questions that all of you have been submitting to me, and give you some context about how to create trust in teams, how to create some more trust in yourselves. And so here's what I want to do to get started, just so I can see who's all out there in the comment section. I want you to just type in the comment section what state you're watching from. I'll be able to see it at some point as we go through here. But here's what I know to be true about trust. Number one thing I want to leave you with is that trust is our most important competitive advantage. I don't care if that's in our marriage, if it's in the way that we lead in businesses. The reason it's our most important competitive advantage, the more trust we have, the more safety people feel in the relationship. And when there's safety, we have innovation, creativity, there's more productivity, there's more engagement. Everything increases when we have more trust in our relationships. And I think so much of that has to do with actually how we communicate. For those that don't know, that might just be tuning in for the first time, everything I teach is around leadership presence. And I always define leadership presence as that style of how you communicate, and does that style earn other people's confidence and trust? If it does, I think that's leadership presence. If it's not, we have an issue, and we need to figure out what are we doing and how do we start showing up differently. So here's what I want to do. I got so many questions from you all. I actually just want to spend this whole entire live session answering your questions around trust. And I haven't even dug into them a lot because I really wanted to just give you my initial thoughts based on what you entered. So we're going to start here. Somebody messaged me and they said, listen, what does trust even mean? They're like, in today's world, people, we throw out this term, and what does it mean? I'm going to tell you how I define trust. I think everyone has a different meaning, but I try to just keep things simple. To me, trust is the confident belief that we're just going to have each other's back. I think about that even in business, right? And in business, I buy your product. When I buy that product, I have this confident belief that it's going to do what you said it's going to do, that it's going to meet my needs. I think about in business with the leadership, I have this confident belief that when I need you, you're going to help remove roadblocks. You're going to have my back and tell me and be candid with me with the feedback that I need to grow. And in return, I'm going to produce results and do everything I can to put you as my leader in a positive light. To me, I think we can make some crazy definition, and we can make it bigger than I think it needs to be. But trust to me is this confident belief that we're going to have each other's back, especially when we need to. So hope that resonates with you. The other one that someone sent me was this. This was a hard one, y'all. And I am so fascinated on what you think about this, so you can drop it in the comments section. Someone says, do you think trust is earned or is it given? And explain why. I have to be really honest. I have really been sitting with this for a while. And so if you have a thought, put it in the comment section. But this is my initial thought. I actually, when I first started doing all the research about trust, I was like, it's earned. That's part of it. And the more I've gotten into it, I've realized that's partially not true. And here's why. Partially, I think we go into relationships and we initially give trust to people. And I'm going to give you some examples. Colin Powell, in his book, his book called It Worked for Me, talks about when you go into a new leadership role, your number one item that you have to be able to do immediately is to extend trust to other people. You have to give the people on your team trust so that they will go to bat for you, that they know that you believe in them. And so he talks about the dangers of when we don't do that. There's another great book on trust that I've read where he talks about when you don't give trust to other people, what you inevitably do is just learn to keep a scorecard. And then you become I always like the trust police to everyone else in your life. And no one's ever going to meet your expectations. No one's ever going to live up to it. And so trust is always going to be impacted in your relationships. And just for even my own personal experience, I've learned that in relationships that have gone really well, I've always given trust to those relationships first, right? I interviewed an executive. I won't give it away yet because it'll probably be in a book, but I interviewed an executive this week, a CEO, and he said, I give everyone 100. He goes, but your next score is 0. And, it's interesting to hear that philosophy that I'm going to give it to you. And I do think great leaders that want to have trusting relationships or trusting teams, you've got to step up and be able to give that trust to other people. But then that doesn't mean we give blind trust and we just give everyone, we say everything we want. We don't just go down this, give our keys to our car to people we don't know. I don't think we blindly just give everything. I think it's strategic. And I think it comes from kind of who we are. So I was interviewing someone else right before this live, and I asked the question, do you think it's given or do you think it's earned? And he goes, I think it's built. And part of building trust is that you give it, but when somebody does something or there's an action that erodes trust, then we have to earn some of that back. And so I don't know if it's even fair to say that, is it given or is it earned? I think it's all of that. A relationship built on trust takes multiple people. And in that, both people are doing their parts. They're giving trust. They're earning it when they mess up. They're asking forgiveness and all of that when they get it wrong, so that we can keep that trust going in the relationship. So that's my initial thoughts on that. Here's the next one. Someone says, how do you trust if you're skeptical by nature? And isn't this so many people? My initial thought, just when I see this question, is start learning to trust yourself. I think it's really hard I don't even know if it's possible truly to start trusting other people when you don't even trust who you are, your choices, your voice, your actions. And the reason I say that is, I find that people that micromanage, this is only my opinion, people that micromanage, it's not usually about other people. It's because they don't trust themselves. And so they need to be in full control. And so when we feel out of control inside, we try to lash out and control everything that we can outwardly. And what I've learned is part of me trusting myself and building confidence is to say, I trust that I can handle whatever comes my way. I trust that we can always take a different direction if the direction that we're going down is not the one that I think that needs to happen. And so I think if you're skeptical by nature, I think you need to step back and say, why is that? What was the earliest memory I have of where that came from? And then what do I want to see myself do differently moving forward? I think you got to start trusting yourself more. Next question. Someone asked, so this is important to me. What specific actions does it take to demonstrate trust? I believe there are 4. Listen, I'm writing a mini book right now on trust, and I don't care who you research. We're all saying the same thing. We're just saying it in different ways. I'm going to tell you what I believe the 4 actions that build, kind of give all of that stuff, trust, what they are. Here's what I believe. Number 1, it's truth. So with truth comes your ability to share your perspective, but also understand that your truth is not the only truth. Truth also, it brings up this whole element of candor, and part of being truthful is being candid with people, giving the feedback that we need to give. And so truth is number 1. Number 2 is transparency. So great that you told me, what you feel, but transparency is about why you feel that way. Was there something that happened? What's the story attached to it? Many of you probably know I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. And Brene Brown says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And I think about transparency is getting to clarity with people, whether that's about boundaries, about the story that I've created and why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. And so transparency is really important. So we got truth, transparency. Third element that I think it takes to build trust is actually tact. It's not just what you say, it's so much of really how we say it. I don't know about you, this has been my life's work. Back in my 20s, super ego driven. And, I was one of those people that probably would have said, you know what? I'm just a truth teller. I just tell people how it is. And I don't know about any of you all. That's me being real. If you ever have someone in your life that says, I'm just a truth teller, I just tell people how it is, I think what they're really telling you is that they're a jerk. What happens is they believe their truth is the only truth, and they're going to say it, and they're going to do it at any cost, regardless of how it makes other people feel. And I think the best leaders that have the best trusting relationships with people are very mindful of how their words make other people feel. Does it make people feel safe that we can continue to open up? And the reason why that's important, when your intensity gets in the way of your message, people will focus more on the intensity than they will on the actual message, which is what we're completely going against. And you can't have trust when that happens. So tact. And then the last element that I think it takes to build trust is this idea of togetherness, that I'm not in this just for myself, that I might be mad at you. There might be this moment I want to, I just feel like I get so angry. I don't even want to, I've even questioned being in this relationship, but I don't do actions that are going to sabotage the trust between us, even when I'm mad. And so, a lot of people talk about emotional deposits. That's all about this idea that we're in this together. So I make those deposits because it's about growing that trust account between each other. So 4 elements to building trust: truth, transparency, tact, and togetherness. Someone asked me, can trust ever be regained after it's been lost? I think that depends. My initial answer is yes. But I also think we all have different levels of trust tolerance. And this is what I mean. Tell me, give a heart or a like if you agree with this comment, that if there's someone that I don't really have a relationship with, and maybe that I don't know, and they do an action that completely erodes my trust, it's much easier to walk away. I don't need to engage in that relationship again. So for me, I might not want to regain it, and I can walk away. With someone, and that trust tolerance about what I'm willing to put up with someone that I don't have a deep, meaningful relationship is much smaller of a trust tolerance than someone that I have a really meaningful, long-lasting relationship. So my best friend might do something that a stranger might do, but if the stranger does it, I'm like, I'm out, right? But my best friend and I have built up such a large amount of trust over the years that one action that might impact my view of someone who I don't know would be different if my best friend did it, because my trust tolerance is higher. We have a longer history, but I'm going to have the conversation. I'm going to be transparent about how it made me feel. I'm going to be tactful in how I deliver it. But part of me coming to you and talking about it is this idea of togetherness, and this doesn't feel right to me. And I need to talk about this because we can't continue to move forward this way. So to me, I do think that it can be rebuilt. And more importantly, I think to do that, some things have to happen. Number one, I think you have to be able to practice forgiveness. Depends on who did it, whether that's forgiveness for yourself or forgiveness for to the other person. Are you even willing to extend that? I think people also have to own their part in the dysfunction. I always say that anytime a relationship fails, both people have a part to play. I don't think all those parts are equal. But I think when you can come into it thinking, how did I, or what part of this do I need to own about what might have happened to the trust? I think that's important, because I think when you do that, you invite other people to do the same exact thing. So, and then I think being willing to just have the conversations. I've coached a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, we've already talked about this 2 other times with someone else. And I'm like, but if your focus is on togetherness and then that person needs to talk 7 times, then you talk 7 times. Doesn't matter if you talk 3 times or 4. You talk as much as the relationship requires you to talk so that you can build the trust back. Next question. Someone asked me, how do you build trust with your team when you're still learning your new role? Yeah, you want your team to trust you, but you're struggling with trusting yourself. This is so fascinating to me. I think you do got to build the trust in yourself, but I also think you got to go back and remind yourself of what you do know. If you're leading a team, and if you've led teams before, there are obviously things that you have done that you can say on what has made me successful to get to this point. Remember those moments. Put your trust back in what got you there. I find that so often we're living in the what ifs or should have be's, or I should be doing this, versus remembering what I'm really good at, what got me here, whether that's I'm good at relationships. You know what? I'm knowledgeable in my area of expertise. So how do you build trust with your team when you're still learning a new role? 2 things. One is if it's you struggling with yourself, remember what you're good at and what got you there. The most important thing to me about building trust with your team when you're learning a new role, they don't need to know that you're the most knowledgeable person. What they need from you is to connect with them. So remember I talked about togetherness. I think all relationships start and end because we're either focusing or not focusing on the idea of togetherness. So you don't need to go in and make a lot of changes. What you need to do is go in and make a lot of connections and connect with people, start building that trust and rely on them. Going back to what Colin Powell said, he goes, my job is to give the trust from the moment that I get in. And if you start doing that, I think you'll start seeing the trust from them. So that's my initial thoughts as we talk about that one. Can you trust without respect? Oh, this is interesting. Can you respect without trust? I have, there's something coming up for me. I don't think that you can trust without respect, because respect is attached to tact. And so I think that has to happen. Can you respect without trust? Yes. I think it's because I think that's about your character, that I can maintain my character and who I am at my best, even when I don't agree with you. I don't like you. I don't ever want to associate with you. That doesn't mean that I have to lose my character and my tact in the process of all that. Next question. Why are the energies and the vibes that you get the first thing we make judgments from? Okay, y'all. I don't know if this is going to resonate, but this is where I've had this conversation before, where I think there is a fine line between intuition and baggage. And I think sometimes when people say, oh, my intuition tells me whatever, I think you got to get clear about when that's true for you. And if it's your intuition, I actually think you need to trust it. So if your energy, your intuition, you meet someone is telling you, you know what, something's coming up, I don't know about this person, I actually think you should trust it. But you'll know it's your baggage when you find that every time you meet someone, you create a story like this. And those stories aren't kind of grounded in any factual, information, or it's just you're bringing your past baggage into that. That's not your intuition, boo. That's your baggage. And I think you got to understand, is it intuition or is it baggage that's where that vibe and that energy is actually coming from. How do we repair broken trust? Mentioned this earlier. So you're going to repair it. You got to own your part in the dysfunction. You got to be able to extend forgiveness. You have to be able to talk about it as many times as the relationship needs. And then you've probably heard this line. They say the best apology is a change in behavior. We have to have a demonstration that we're both trying to do things differently as we move forward. So I'm just going to answer a couple more. Let's see if I can go down here. Let's see here. This is interesting. Is trust rooted in repetitious acts? And how do we act when we notice if someone slightly changes the routine? So I do think when I said what are the 4 elements that build trust? Truth, transparency, tact, and togetherness. So I do believe that there are these repetitious actions that we do to continue to build trust in all of our relationships. But when you ask the question, what do we do when we notice someone changes it? I think that's tricky. I think you have an option. I always ask myself, is this a moment or is it a pattern? If it's a moment, maybe we just give people some grace and say, maybe they're having a bad day. But the moment something becomes a pattern and we start seeing that change in behavior is ongoing, then I think we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the relationship, togetherness, to say something. We can be tactful in how we do it and just be transparent about our truth. And so I do think we bring it up once we start seeing a pattern, just to say, hey, this is what's coming up for me. Want to ask you what's going on there. So I think that's important. Okay, y'all, I know some of y'all been here. How do you recommend working with someone that you can't trust when you're required to do so? Woo, y'all, that's a loaded question. All right, so how do you recommend working with someone that you can't trust when you're required to do so? Stop thinking you have to connect with everybody. And that might go against everything I teach, because I'm teaching about connection and trust. But here's my thought. I think sometimes you might have peers in your company, or you might even have customers where the best that you're going to be able to get is a transactional relationship. And that means you don't have to talk about your family. You don't have to give your heart. And maybe sometimes, I hope that's not the majority. But I think sometimes understanding that maybe sometimes in life, for me to protect my own energy, my own boundaries, and my own sanity, that a transactional relationship's the best I'm going to have. And that's okay, because as long as we are working for the business and moving the business forward, that might be the best relationship to have. I am going to caveat something. I don't think you should work for a boss you don't trust. And Greg Creed, best leader I've ever met, said this line to me. He says, if you ever have to give up who you are for a job, you are in the wrong job. And I think when the trust is eroded between you and your direct supervisor, manager, boss, leader, whatever, however you choose to define it, I think the emotional energy that takes to try to day after day to stay in is emotionally exhausting, and I don't think it's necessary. But I also say maybe I'm saying that maybe from a place of privilege to say, but I think that here's why I'll say that. As coaches, we believe that your power lies in your choices. And you only feel victimized when you feel that someone takes your choices away. And I want you to know that staying in that job and creating a transactional relationship is a choice. And that's okay. But so is saying, I deserve better. I deserve to have a boss where I can have a trusting relationship, that we can have each other's back. And maybe it doesn't mean I leave right away, but I'm going to start getting myself ready to put myself in a position where I can have that type of trusting relationship with someone. So I do think you can have a relationship, especially professionally, that's transactional. I don't think that should be the majority of them. And I don't think you should be working for a boss that you don't trust. Let me see if there's one more I can go through here. Oh, Lord, y'all getting it. How do you learn to trust when the people you love the most hurt you the most? Okay. First of all, I think when I even hear, first of all, I just want to say this, that if that is your experience, which I'm assuming it is because you wrote the question, that I'm sorry that you've had to go through that. I think so often there's people in our lives that don't love us the way that we need it to be loved. Maybe more importantly, they don't know how to love us the way that we need it to be loved. And I think the only way through that is through forgiveness. That doesn't mean we condone it. That doesn't mean we agree with it. That doesn't mean it was acceptable. But to say, I believe, and this is a choice, I believe that you did not know how to love me the way that I needed to be loved. So for that, I'm willing to forgive you. But that doesn't mean I need to engage in them anymore. But what you're doing is you're holding yourself hostage from having the love and the trust and the type of relationships that you want based on how other people treated you. And for you to say, I get to break that cycle, and I'm going to break that cycle, and I'm going to create the truth, the transparency, the tact, and the togetherness that other people in my life should have given me, but didn't know how. But I know how, and I'm going to make some different choices moving forward. That would be my initial thoughts. All right. Hey, I'm just going to look down through your comments really quick. Carol said, love the 4 T's to trust. Yeah, if you want to build trust, you got to have truth, transparency, tact, and togetherness. Let's see here. Tanya says, can you say that directly to them just like that? I'm just seeing it now, so I'm not sure what comment it is, so just drop it in there. Tracy, amen. If you have to change who you are for a job, you're in the wrong job. Absolutely. Yeah. Any questions from you all watching? I'll just do one more from the questions that were sent, and then I'll answer any of the ones that you all have. But someone at the end says, I actually am going to use this term. Someone dropped this in. How do you avoid carrying over feelings of mistrust or betrayal to a new relationship and employer? How do you avoid trust PTSD? I don't know who wrote that, but I'm stealing that. It will be in the book. Do y'all have trust PTSD? Because this is the thing. This is classic, in coaching or anything, they say, right? What you don't heal, you just repeat. And I'm such a believer that I'm going to give you an analogy. My boss one time, when I was early on in my career, she's like, Justin, you need to learn to sit in the bathwater and learn what you need to learn. Because what happens is so many times when we're uncomfortable, we want to just get out and move on and not deal or address the discomfort. It's like when the bathwater starts getting cold, we just want to get out, and we don't learn sometimes what we need to learn in our relationships. And so to your point, I think if we get out of one and we haven't really analyzed it, or just, I don't even think we have to sit there and psychoanalyze it. If we just haven't thought through, what did I learn about myself in this? What do I need to do differently in the next one so that I don't repeat it? When we don't do that just easy level of work, I think we repeat it time after time. When I work with people that have the same issues over and over, maybe they've been married 17 times, and make that number up. I'm like, boo, the only repeating person in every relationship, it's you. It's you. And so we can blame everyone else, or we can say, my power lies in my choices, and I have a choice how I'm going to show up, and I'm going to figure out what am I doing that keeps repeating me repeating in these relationships? Why do I keep finding myself with a certain type of individual? What am I doing that's allowing myself to show up this way? So how do we avoid carrying it over? First of all, I think you got to be aware of the types of relationships you keep finding yourself in. You need to own what is your part in that. Why do you keep finding yourself in that? Is there something you're doing that's contributing to it? And then going back to everything I said before, forgiveness, and being able to move forward. I think that's how you learn to have trust PTSD, because when we don't, what happens is when we haven't resolved our own stuff, what we do is we go into relationships and then we try to just keep everyone at an arm's length distance. If I can just keep everyone, my partner, my family, my boss, my coworkers, I can keep everyone at an arm's length distance. That way no one can ever hurt me. That's all control. And as a result of that, you will never form the trust and the connection that you say you so desperately want, because you're the one actually holding everyone at an arm's length distance. So hope that helps a little bit. Justin says, I see forgiveness as saying I've learned a lesson from the experience, and that doesn't mean you have to continue with the relationship. I so agree, Justin. Thank you for sharing that. You know, there was a guy, I wrote about this in my book, Bold New You, but around forgiveness, there was a guy that was on Oprah's show one time, and he said something very similar that says basically that forgiveness is letting go of the past and understanding that it couldn't be any different. It's just acknowledging that I can sit here for years, maybe my whole life, and wonder what could have happened. Forgiveness is acknowledging that the past is the past and it cannot be any different, and then choosing to move forward and not be held victim to that. Tanya, in reference to a transactional relationship. Oh, I got you. So Tanya asked earlier, is it okay just to tell that person that, listen, the best we're going to have is a transactional relationship and just put it out there like that? I don't think you should just put it out there like that. I think it depends on what's happening in the relationship, but I think you just start showing up that way. Now, if the person is not liking how the relationship is going, then I'm going to honor the relationship enough to have a conversation. And if they ask why does it feel this way, I'm going to be transparent, because you know what? I feel like we've worked together 3 times. I feel like every time I've come to you, you went around me to talk to other people. And I don't feel that we have that trust. And then I would say, so if you're willing to try to build that trust together, I'll go in on it with you. But this is why right now that I've chosen to create a transactional relationship where we focus on the business and just moving the business forward. So I think it would depend on what's happening in the relationship. So hope that gives you some insight, Tanya. All right, everybody. Listen, I hope that gives you some thoughts. I'm going to continue to take some of your questions in. I'll come back and we'll do another conversation just on trust if that's helpful. But what I would say is, so if you have any more questions, drop them in the comment section. I'll be able to see them as we go watch this video. I'm such a believer that trust is one of the most meaningful parts of how we lead, of how we show up in relationships. And it's all based on how we actually communicate. So I just hope today it's given you something to think about. If no one tells you they believe in you, I believe in you. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I'm sending you awesome love. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.